We are watching what may be a historic product launch failure. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know I'm talking about the Tesla Cybertruck. And today we're going to dig into it because, well, it's actually challenging Edsel for failure right now. Seriously. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and I read an interesting stat this morning, and it got me thinking about this and doing a little research, comparing some numbers, and the comparisons are rather stark to me. Now, it has become kind of a cottage industry in social media to criticize the Cybertruck. It's become a lightning rod for either a political commentary against Musk's involvement in the political realm, the administration, or just against EVs. And certainly there's groups like on Reddit, the Cyberstuck subreddit, which has over 285,000 members, posting pictures of the Cybertruck just not doing basic truck things very well. But I've always tried to not pile on because problems get worked out, and actually I like Tesla cars very, very much. I'm not trying to get into the political realm with this, but it is an abject failure so far. And let's look at some comparisons here. And to do that, we need to start back in the 1950s. Now, Ford decided they needed to launch a brand new division, which eventually would be called Edsel, and they invested $400 million in bringing this to fruition. And, well, that's worth over $4 billion in today's money. For comparison, in the 80s, when Toyota decided they wanted to bring Lexus to life, they invested about $1 billion. That bought them a whole new brand, a brand new car, new engine, new transmission, new frame, new manufacturing plant, and one of the best built cars in history. In today's dollars, that's about $2.5 billion. Ford invested 1.5 times more to bring the Edsel to market. Now, they did end up with 4 cars out of it, but they did not have any dedicated manufacturing plants. They actually built it on 2 different plants in the same line. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So they created the Edsel to hit the mid-market, something around a Buick, for example. And unfortunately, they had Mercury in the same space. They invested all this money, and what they released was something with controversial styling. People still joke about the styling of the Edsel. They ended up with an all-new, promised a technologically advanced car of the future that used Ford engineering and Ford mechanicals and some Ford body parts. It wasn't built in a dedicated factory. And coming back to that point, the factory workers had to build the Edsels but not impact their quota, their production speed of Ford. So a auto worker standing there on the line, and Edsel comes down, they have to go to a totally different toolkit, a totally different parts bin, assemble this, and not interfere with their production of the Fords that are coming. And so, in addition to other quality problems, Edsels came off the end of the line incomplete, with parts in the trunk with instructions for dealers to finish assembly. And when it was launched, they were actually pretty powerful for their time, but they were widely ridiculed, and some of those high-tech features like the push-button transmission were poorly received or poorly conceived, and sometimes unreliable as well. For all their trouble in setting up a whole new dealer network, Ford promised over 200,000 sales a year in this burgeoning market in the middle of the sector. But when the Edsel was released, consumers were confused. It was largely just a Ford with some gimmicky features that were overpriced. It was priced similar to their Mercury lineup, so was it upscale or not? And the quality was poor, and it was ugly. Consumers stayed away. They sold about 68,000 their first year, and over a 3-year period, they sold about, I think, 118,000, something like that, before Ford finally pulled the plug because the whole division threatened to pull the entire company down with it. It is a catastrophic, historic industrial manufacturing failure. And I need to point out about the Edsel here, they did no market research. They didn't bring the public in to look at the styling or to comment on any of the decisions they were making. They just plowed ahead, designed by committee. They believed they knew what the public wanted. So fast forward to Elon Musk and Tesla. He introduces the Cybertruck, and famously he says the windows are going to be bulletproof, and then the window cracks during a presentation. But famously, he said a few different things. First off is they do not do any market research. They go with their gut, just like Ford did with the Edsel. Number two is that the market is huge. They believe they could sell about 250,000 of these things a year. Sound familiar to the Edsel? And that they bragged that they had over 1 million pre-orders during development. Now, also, there's a few major differences. Tesla did not set up a whole different division for this with different dealerships, number one, but they did cost cut their way along. Similar to Ford not wanting to build new factories, Tesla needed to upfit their Austin factory to create the Cybertruck, but they didn't want to invest about $200 million into a new paint bay. So they decided to go with stainless steel, but stainless steel has a really cool quality. It wants to bend back to where it was. And that's why during the 13 months approximately of the Cybertruck being on sale, there's been 8 different recalls. So Edsel, poor quality, lots of problems. Cybertruck, 8 recalls in 13 months. One of these problems that has come out on social media is panels actually falling off. And it is believed, from what I've read, that the panels are trying to bend back and just snapping off the car. I think this decision to not spend $200 million is probably going to cost them far, far more than that in the long run. But it comes out, and the Cybertruck, well, it doesn't do basic truck things very well. It's interesting, the reception of the Cybertruck is, your opinion of it is largely based on whether you thought favorably about it before or not. For example, either their first year sales could be they're number one in the EV truck market, beating the F-150, the Chevy Silverado EV, and the Rivian, or it's a horrific failure because forecasting 250,000 and ultimately only hitting about 38,000 in its first full year of sales. Now, Tesla does not break out individual model sales, so I can't look back to 2023 and see in the fourth quarter how many Cybertrucks they sold. So we can look at 2024 and extrapolate out about 38,000, 39,000 sales of the Cybertruck. No matter how you slice it, far, far underneath their initial predictions. And part of the reason is that I've talked to a lot of people about the Cybertruck personally, and they love the idea of it. They kind of love its funky styling. They love that it's different than other trucks out there, right? But none of these people have actually put their money towards it. And part of that is the price. While they originally were talking about an entry-level Cybertruck at about $40,000, the entry-level Cybertruck now is about $70,000. And so it's substantially more expensive, behind schedule, released. And if you've ever stood next to one, they're ginormous. They're really, really huge, but doesn't feel like a great use of space for the trucky kind of things, in addition to the quality problems, and it can't do basic off-roading even though it has theoretically four-wheel drive. So it is on its way to a massive failure on the order of the Edsel. Now, it is estimated that Tesla spent about $900 million for this, which is nowhere close to, if I do the math on this, not $4 billion. 900 million, yeah, 4 billion. And they didn't set up a whole different division for it. And it's one vehicle, not 4 vehicles like the Edsel. But the point remains, it's actually very similar that neither company did any market research with the public. Both of them spent massive amounts of money. Both of them had quality products or quality issues with the product. Both of them built them on a same assembly line without dedicating something over here for it. And both of them were massive sales success when they expected over 200 or over 250,000 in sales their first year. It's a massive, massive failure. And the early data from January and February of 2025 indicates that the sales decrease from fourth quarter of 2024 is continuing, which is affecting all of Tesla, of course. So can Tesla fix these problems? Well, somewhat, yes. I mean, can they fix the quality problems? Absolutely. Could they do something about the pricing? Absolutely. And they're probably going to throw a bunch of incentives on it in terms of free charging and things like that. Can they fix the styling? Can they fix its bulkiness, the fact that it doesn't do truck things exceptionally well compared to some of the other offerings out there? No, they really can't. They can fix a lot about this, but the end result is that Ford had a whole new division it launched that is an epic failure, a failure that's taught in schools. That's how bad it is. That Toyota looked at when they were introducing Lexus and said, let's not do that. And it feels like in many ways, Tesla is repeating the past with a product that they didn't ask what people wanted in advance and then released a poor quality product. And in the face of what's not a recession, like the Edsel had to try to overcome, but a political headwind. We're living through history. As the old saying goes, may you live in interesting times. And we are definitely living through history right now. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me. Thanks.